A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
We're going to take some time to perhaps be a bit of a cheer squad for women and those who serve in levels of leadership, especially for those who serve in church and in mission. And maybe it is controversial, but for centuries, the role of women serving as leaders has been, maybe sometimes limited, perhaps because of a lack of affirmation. In Acts chapter 2 and verses 17 and 18, Peter quotes the prophet Joel, who said, "In the last days, God says, I'll pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I'll pour out my spirit." Well, our special guest today has just been appointed as the leader involved in networking women's ministries from 8 nations, talking Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Papua and West Papua, Tonga and Vanuatu. Tracy Valentine is the new president of Baptist Women of the Pacific. So a conversation today cheering on women and an insight into the challenges that women face in some of the surrounding nations to Australia in the South Pacific. Tracy, let me say a special welcome along to 2020.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey Tracy, let's start talking about maybe Islander women, because you're going to be interacting a lot with Islander women. There's a little bit of a caricature, when we think of Islander women sitting in the sand, weaving baskets and hats, food preparation, and some of those might be more quaint symbols of island life. But how are you reflecting on the value of women in these surrounding nations around Australia?
Yes, thanks, Neil. So I would highly value those spaces. I know those women continue to use traditional cultural ways of engaging with each other. And in fact, they're really important ways when they do meet in a circle of communicating, of sharing the gospel, and of being the supporters and often the income earners for their family. But obviously, it is way bigger than that. What they contribute in their churches and their communities is absolutely significant, and they carry a lot of weight in those environments. And over time, things have shifted as well. And so I see our cultures around the Pacific as being incredibly rich. I absolutely love their sense of community, doing life together, and I actually think we've got a lot to learn from them, definitely, and to take away from the way that they do interact, sharing not only stories but faith through the generations, and using storytelling to do that. It's one of their strengths for sure.
You remind us at the beginning of a conversation like this that you could be in some ways self-absorbed and prideful, and suggest that somehow or other in your new role you're going to be the one that downloads all of our Australianised wisdom. In fact, I love your humility in saying that there are things in community life that we can learn from some of those stereotypical images of women around the island communities around Australia. On the same level here of importance, it's recognising the potential in those women for leadership in a spiritual sense. That's something that you will be able to have a really major input into.
Yes, we really recognise that there are incredible leaders in Australia, New Zealand and across our Pacific region. Amazing women who are called into spaces of leadership. The area of leadership that these women are in, that we interact with, is in women's ministry, and it does flow on beyond that. For example, in Papua, we have women who sit on the leadership there of the Baptist Women of Papua who are politicians. They sit in Parliament. We have people people across the region who work in all sorts of different industries. We've got engineers and accountants and indeed pastors in all of these spaces. And so the women have incredible potential. They're really wanting to lean in and to learn about leadership. I definitely don't think that we hold all of the leadership cards here in our Western context. I think there is lots to learn, but a lot of the role is actually about collaboration.
And, you know, mindful that some of these South Pacific Island nations are very Christianised. Some might say it can sometimes be shallow, but, you know, who are we to judge on that? And because there's going to be depth and there's going to be lots of shallowness too. But, hey, when we talk about our Christianity, our values, our ethics and the sorts of things that might be the fruit of a collaboration, let me ask you, you know, is it true that women in several of the South Pacific Island nations face some of the highest rates of domestic and intimate partner violence globally? So, you know, we're not talking, we're away from the fun and the caricatures here. We're into the reality of women in surrounding nations. Is that true?
Absolutely. So the women in the Pacific, they suffer from the highest percentage of domestic violence situations in the world. And as you would know, we're not released from that in Australia. That is a common situation here and in New Zealand. The women are really strong when it comes to their faith, when it comes to what you were saying just then about, oh, is there a shallow faith? I would say that when you hear the women pray, when you hear their worship, their reliance on God is so deep. Their faith in God is so deep. And perhaps even more so because their reliance on Him is just so high and they are up against it. Give a lot of credit to our past president, Alyssa McPherson. She put a lot of energy into the space of advocating for the women in the space of domestic violence, and she developed even a website that was a part of the Global Baptist Women's Movement to equip women and churches to be able to support each other and to raise the awareness of that domestic violence issue.
You know, women cheering on women, let's just say all of us cheering on women who are going through these sorts of hardships. Now, I'm not trying to tar all of these nations with the same brush. I mean, these things happen here too in Australia, but as you say, like 2/3, so two out of three women reporting experiencing physical or sexual violence by a partner during their lifetime. Some nations, and let's just cast a glance north, Papua New Guinea, which is going to be one of the nations you're going to be networking with. In some regions, violence against women almost universal. Cases of gang rape, all sorts of things. And you know, coming from a sometimes tribal animist background, I guess I'll just get your perception here, because we carry a message of the gospel. It's called good news. And when it's coming into these sorts of settings where this is the state that women have to deal with on a daily basis, good news that might see some relief or some containment of those things because of the message, it truly is good news.
Absolutely. It is good news. The good news of Jesus is that He does not want any of His daughters to be in that type of situation. And I know some people might say, oh, it's not only women who suffer from domestic violence, but they definitely are the majority of people who are suffering and find themselves in this situation. I think one of the biggest hurdles that we have found is the shame that goes along with that and the desire to keep face. And so hiding that the women are in environments of domestic violence has been a significant issue. They don't want to come and admit that this is their situation. And then another layer of that has been some unhealthy teaching from within the church, that instead of declaring that this is something something that is bad, and empowering particularly partners to be the protectors, there has been unhealthy teaching around the area of submission, and that hasn't helped in the church environment. So it's just so important for education to be at the forefront, and for pastors to actually be equipped in being able to come alongside, be that safe place for women to turn, and for fellow Christians to be able to come along and support. And in fact, in 2020, the Baptist Women of the Pacific were a part of creating a website in Australia called Safer Spaces, and it's a website that actually equips pastors and church leaders in how to make sure that we can be safer spaces across not only Australia but in the Pacific area as well.
There is a certain sense, isn't there? And you might be able to reflect on this, Tracy, but lots of different denominations have their own women's movements, but you as Baptist, you've certainly got something a little bit well defined, and you're hitting the ground running here.
Yeah, it's an exciting space to be in with the women around the Pacific. We not only partner with women in the Pacific, it's actually a part of Baptist World Alliance. I'm one of 7 continental leaders in the Baptist World Alliance, and we actually represent half of the 50 million Baptists around the world that are a part of Baptist World Alliance. So we all work not only collaboratively around Australia, but then the Pacific, around the Asian Pacific area, and then around the world. So it is pretty awesome, our Baptist little family. We cheer on all denominations, but we definitely love our Baptist family.
Some might be even surprised. 50 million around the world, and 7 continents, and you're leading the women's movement here in Australia and South Pacific, but there are people who are doing the similar sorts of things to what you're doing, and with various contexts around the world. Hey, what sort of projects are you working with for women in these island nations that are our near neighbours?
Yes, so we have worked collaboratively together, and we're better together, aren't we? And so based on that, we have been in the past really taking those opportunities to collaborate together. In 2022 in Fiji, they established the Seeds of Hope project, which empowered women with sustainable gardening opportunities to feed the family and their communities. In Vanuatu in particular, we partnered in disaster preparedness training, and also launched small business initiatives with the women. I love the fact that in PNG, one of their presidents in the past has actually established a radio ministry for women's in the highlands of PNG so that they could hear the scripture daily. Our Tongan women regularly visit their local prisons to be able to engage with the women, encourage, share the gospel. And Papua is an incredibly strongly Baptist nation, and they have such a fervour for the gospel, and they have incredible conferences and gatherings there. They're amazing prayers. But across the Pacific, there are lots of different projects. Something that we're looking at into the coming year is supporting 30 women in Papua studying at the Bible College there. And there's many widows among them, and they are struggling to attend class because they need to be at the markets to feed their families. So we are looking at ways to be able to support those women who are passionate about the gospel, who are passionate about being equipped, and we want to come alongside and support. So they're the types of things that we've been doing.
You know, you give us a fabulous context there, because sometimes times when we think of a mission endeavour, you've got people who have gone off into, the jungles of the highlands of Papua New Guinea and they've preached the gospel and they've formed small groups and it's grown into a church, and all of a sudden you've got a mission context and there's a church that exists and becomes self-sustaining. But you've taken us to a new level beyond that. I mean, what do you do then to network with that church, with those nationals who are running their own spiritual maturity programs and then becoming the support base and the cheer squad and the one who operates to advocate for them and with them? So you've taken us to a really great context there. So it's not just going as a missionary, there's a follow-up work and you're doing it.
And I think that's just what our women are hungry for. Every time I speak to them, they are hungry to be able to be equipped, to be able to support. They want to maintain that strong level of biblical literacy. They want to maintain strong churches. They want to lead the next generation coming up. And they are very excited and just lean in to that whole idea of being equipped and to even the level of theological education. And they very much different countries might have their own Bible college, but where they don't, they do rely on other countries to be able to provide that extra level of training and support. And we're just keen to be able to help them with that. We partner. We are not interested in taking our Western ways of doing things. We want everything to be accessible through their culture. And we have high trust in these women because they are just so faithful. And they are so faithful to the Bible.
And you mentioned there's 30 women going through Bible college in Papua New Guinea. And in Papua. In Papua, okay.
This is specifically in Papua. There might be women in Papua New Guinea, but specifically in Papua.
Okay, but you've got 30 women going through Bible college, and they're getting a theological education, and so they're going to be contributing into the maturity of the spirituality of the women that they will go on to lead. That's a very powerful concept, and that's the way influence really happens in a community, isn't it? So, I mean, when we talk about people going to Bible college, ultimately it's about the sort of influence they'll have in their lives.
Absolutely, Neil. And do you know, I was actually extremely emotional after speaking to the women when I met with them to talk about their future plans. They have a lot of needs. They have physical needs. They have needs of sustainability and domestic issues. And yet when I asked them, what would your priority be for your women? Their priority was their women going through Bible college above being able to feed their families. It was allowing women to be able to be taught, to be able to be strong in their faith, to really have great knowledge of the Bible, because their recognition of the way that if God can speak through their women, if they as a community were strong in faith, well, then God would lead them. And I was just overwhelmed by the fact that they would do that. That would be their priority.
Lots more to talk about. Hey, Tracy, a little birdie tells me that you started serving in children's ministry, and now you're put in charge of what is a significant office. So, faithful in a little, and now you've been called on to be faithful with a big responsibility. Tell us about your beginnings here in leadership and ministry.
Yeah, sure, Neil. I'm actually quite overwhelmed by where God has led me. My beginnings into ministry were done very gingerly. I actually didn't want to move into ministry for the reasons that I didn't think that women should be called into pastoral ministry. I didn't apply for the job a couple of times when it came up. And then one day my pastor called me and he said, Tracy, why are you not applying for this job? You're perfect for it. You're passionate about it. And I went into his office and he just opened the Bible and he revealed to me the examples of the women in the New Testament who were significant leaders in the church. And he really encouraged me. It took me a while. It was a good year after that before I felt comfortable in being in the pulpit because, as you know, Neil, nobody wants to be disobedient to the Bible. We all want to follow God. And I had to be very sure that what I was doing wasn't disobedient to his word. And so through very deep and thorough investigation through the Bible, I eventually felt comfortable and felt like God had called me into these positions. And honestly, I find myself across the board just surprised at where he has led me. And so I began studying to be a pastor. I've been a pastor at Gateway Baptist up here after moving from Victoria and my church down there, and at Sunnybank Baptist Church. I've been able to be in spaces that were supporting the kids and families for Queensland Baptist and lectured at Malian College with that. Just surprise after surprise after surprise, because I thought I was going to be a primary teacher for the rest of my life. I did not see that I would be in these positions. And so God is good. He's kind.
You remind us of something I think that's very important, that being a leader in a Christian context isn't instant. Not like, 43 beans into the cup and you add water and all of a sudden you've got the coffee. There's a little bit of percolation that goes on, and it takes oftentimes many years. There might have been some aspirations as a young woman that didn't actually grow into fruition until I'm not saying you're old. You're certainly not old, but it takes time. There's some percolation and there's hearing from God, and there's a preparation process. That's been a part of your life, your journey, hasn't it? Preparation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I have when I look back, as I think most leaders look back, and I'm just in awe of how God has opened doors but also stretched me. And I've had the privilege here in our local Queensland context of being cheered on by my fellow brothers and sisters and stepping into a role here where I am the regional minister for women pastors, and I just get to support them and have recognised the significance of other people cheering me on. And I just want to be that for other men and women, whoever I come across. Cheer people on.
Not every denomination loves the idea of women as pastors, but there's a deeper story in the Baptist movement, isn't there, around the Baptist World Alliance and separation from Southern Baptists, and that was to do with women serving in ministry. How do you reflect on that?
Yes, so several decades ago, this was one of the significant issues where the Baptist World Alliance decided that actually this was an important issue. They wanted their women to be released, to be able to use their gifting as God had called them. And so it was a significant reason why the Baptist World Alliance actually separated out. And we actually had our Baptist World Alliance World Congress gathering in Brisbane earlier in the year. And certainly Elijah Brown, the president of that organisation, very much affirmed women. But at the same time, we are an autonomous organisation, and every church has its own will release women. And so we do find ourselves in a context where some churches are very affirming of women of leadership in all levels. Some are more comfortable with women in leadership in just some levels of governance and in operations of the church. But certainly in the area of women's ministry, all Baptist churches release women into leadership. So it can be a very important place for women to have opportunity to lead.
And, not our intention today to get into the deep and sometimes murky waters of talking about women in ministry and biblical foundations and proof texts and all of those sorts of things. But women in the Baptist movement, as I understand it too, it's just this past week, I think it is, the anniversary, 75 years since the start of the Baptist World Day of Prayer. This was a women's initiative too, wasn't it?
Yes. Just after the war, the women 75 years ago from different European countries that had been against each other, fighting against each other only years before, women decided that unity in Christ was more important than anything else, and they gathered together with the intentionality of praying for each other. And that has continued and grown. And so around Australia, around the Pacific, over the last 2 weeks, we have had women not only praying for themselves and for us in the Pacific, but globally as well, and celebrating how God has used them in their countries.
Tracy, let me take you into some deeper waters. Not controversial waters at all, but deeper waters, because while we're talking to you as a woman and all those years percolating along and, starting with children's ministry, and all of a sudden now you're an international leader, 8 nations, and looking to network with these women. The thought comes to me, how do women minister to women? And I've got a thought or two, but when I ask you that, what is it, the value of a woman who understands where another woman is at, and you are coming from a leader's role as a Christian believer?
Oh, Neil, there's a couple of things with that. I honestly think there is a wonderful sense of camaraderie. Wherever women meet together, there is a unity of just understanding what we face. And certainly the women across the Pacific have that camaraderie. But even in our context, for example, here in Queensland, within our Baptist church context, we gather. We've been gathering for the last 5 years just as women pastors for dinners, for retreat groups, just Zooming online to pray for each other. And that support has just been absolutely invaluable. And I know myself, I am just so encouraged. It's important, though, to be vigilant about that culture, because when there are fewer positions for women in leadership, sometimes it can be a bit of a competitive kind of culture, and women can be, not supportive of each other. But being absolutely intentional of cheering each other on, of celebrating how God is using our sisters and what He is doing, whatever their context is, and being able to celebrate that broadly through Facebook pages. We have a Facebook page for Baptist Women of the Pacific, and we get to cheer each other on there. We get to cheer each other on in our local Queensland context for Baptist women, but also nationally. It's an important part of encouraging.
I'm interested in you saying that when there are fewer positions in leadership for women, it can be competitive. And, when I think of this sort of way that we assume leadership roles, and reflecting too on Jesus turning the whole leadership question upside down when there was a competitive nature, and I think it was James and John, the sons of thunder, and this competition for who would sit at Jesus' right hand. When Jesus turns the whole leadership thing upside down, he says, wait a minute, it's not about wielding power here or position, it's about who's going to be the greatest servant. So when we talk about being competitive for leadership roles, competitiveness for who's going to assume the greatest servanthood, bring it on. That to me, that sounds like that's the way it ought to be. Competing for a place where you're going to be the servant, that doesn't quite sound as attractive as the one who wields the power. But how do you reflect on that?
Oh, look, I would say, Neil, when you hear me say I'm cheering on the women, I'm cheering and on the everybody. When there is somebody winning, there is somebody who has been stretched and they step up to a leadership position and they're flourishing, and you can just see God using their gifts, the whole kingdom benefits, doesn't it? Whether it's Baptist world, whether I'm seeing somebody from another denomination doing that, I just cheer, because it is the heavens getting the glory. It's God. It's all about God. It's not about us. It's about kingdom work. And so we just want to develop culture of cheering each other on. And I am just so thrilled when I see particularly young emerging leaders that are just growing, and men and women just stepping up into leadership. We're about to face a crisis in Australia with a shortage of pastors, and we need to make sure that we are cheering each other on, that we are celebrating, and there is nothing gained by pulling anybody down.
There might be a competitiveness, and some will have this thought that having a title or something that sounds like it is a higher position or some place of power, that's the way to go. If you think of it as the servant role, there is a sense, isn't there, that no matter what you're called by way of a title, you're actually talking about a job description. So if I say, Pastor Tracy, that doesn't necessarily put you in a higher pedestal spot. It actually says, I'm acknowledging your servant-heartedness and that you have been recognised in that role. There's a certain sense, isn't there? A job description is all that an ordination is.
Yes. I have to be honest with you, Neil. When I was given this position of President of Baptist Women of the Pacific, I have to say that in our Australian context, nobody, very few of us want to be a president of anything. And so I actually introduced myself as, I support the Baptist Women of the Pacific, because, at the end of the day, that is the role description. That is what I'm here to do. It's certainly not about elevating myself. In fact, I just want to continue to reflect the amazing women that I get to represent. And so that's the job description. That's the role.
And, we're at the beginning of your tenure in this new role, Madam President. And, so you'll no doubt be doing a fair bit of travelling over the years ahead. And you'll be carrying with you, no doubt, the goodwill of all of those who are a part of your team. Now, does your team need any bolstering? Is there always, room for another person, another woman who's going to be a part of, the whole thing that you're leading there with Baptist women?
I would love to hear from any woman who is keen to support us, particularly in our Australian context. We have a Facebook page, Baptist Women of the Pacific, and there are details there of how you can contact me if anybody is interested in that. We are very keen to hear from anybody. I am really well supported. This was what I said to God when I was first thinking about pursuing this. I said, Lord, I can't do this by myself. I'm already busy. This is a volunteer role. I already have my role in Queensland Baptist, but I have a full-time job working for Community as well here in Queensland. And so I said, how are you going to support me? And he has brought amazing group of women with an executive team from across the Pacific and some wonderful leaders here in Australia to do that. So I'm very blessed, but we would love to hear from anybody who would like to join in this amazing work.
When you say, I've got a day job too, and working with Community, and, you must be specialised to do what you do because you work in seniors and disability, and having those sorts of of skills, undoubtedly, when you're working in the context with these 8 other nations, that's going to be a very important quality to be able to carry into the context, isn't it? Be able to work with people who are getting on in years and those who even suffer disability.
Yes. So my role here in Corinity is I am the Mission Engagement Manager for Seniors and Disability. And honestly, that as well has been a surprise for me. I didn't see myself moving from kids and families and women into seniors, but at the same time, it's advocating for the vulnerable. And I'm very blessed here in Corinity. It all aligns with our values of being the hands and feet, being called to care, and we just want to represent Jesus well. And I'm very blessed that Corinity have supported me across these different spaces as I've been able to support not only our seniors and advocate for the gospel and just loving on people in our context here in Queensland, but vulnerable across those spaces.
We're cheering on women today, but cheering on Tracy too, taking on this new role. If you're looking ahead here, Tracy, and people might be looking to you about how things go over the coming years because you're the president, how do you think you can evaluate, what sort of fruit comes from getting a network going and being in there for each other with all these women, across the South Pacific? How do you sort of gauge what success looks like when you're in this role that you're taking on here?
A large part of this role, I think, is listening to the women and understanding where they're coming from culturally. I fully acknowledge that I am culturally blind when it comes to a lot of their situations, and so listening carefully and responding. And we have come up with a bit of a plan. We've come up with large kind of bullet points, and we are just waiting now to see how God is going to make those things happen. But it is all about collaboration. So at the end of the day, we want to see kingdom growth. We want to see women in a better place in 5 years' time, and we want to see just flourishing across the Pacific in our churches. And so even if we can just, God willing, move that needle in that direction in the next 5 years, it's just one foot in front of the other, being in tune with the Lord.
You're an inspiration, Tracy. You've come up with a plan. No doubt there's been a prayerfulness about that. And, you can submit your work to the Lord and expect that it's going to succeed in whatever way that He chooses to make that happen. And, you might be counting ordinations, or you might be counting all sorts of issues around churches and what women do. And you might even be looking at children's ministry and all of that, or ministry to those who are aged or those who have disability. You've got all the goods. And, as we're hearing your heartbeat today, it's just a wonderful thing. I think you're an inspiration to women, and I think there'll be listeners who might want to connect with you. And you mentioned your day job at Corinity, so I'm assuming that, for listeners to connect with you, corinity.org.au, is that the best place to connect with you? And and if you're saying, hey, please get this message to Tracy Valentine. She's the one who's the president of the Baptist Women of the Pacific. You know what? She's important, and I want to get this message. And let's expect that God's going to be the forerunner ahead of you in all of the good work that you do.
Absolutely.
Just want to honour you for taking on the role, because it's a courageous thing just to put your hand up and say, okay, well, you think I've got the gift for this? I'm going to put my hand up then, and okay, I'm going to do it. So
Neil, absolutely. I would say I do not feel equipped. I do not feel like I should be in here. It's very surreal, but I think do it scared and just rely on God every day at a time, and He will just lead.
We are wonderfully encouraged by the thought that when we are weak, He is strong. And I think I can hear that in your heartbeat. Tracy Valentine, connect with Tracy. And there might be even Baptist women who are listening to our conversation saying, well, I've never really thought to join the, Baptist Women of the Pacific. Well, there's some inspiration for you wherever you might be right around this wonderful nation of ours. Carinity.org.au. Carinity.org.au. Tracy Valentine, the new president of Baptist Women of the Pacific. Tracy, thanks so much for sharing your heart with us today on 2020.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. It's been delightful.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.